10 ideas that will blow your mind about origins of religion.
Around the world. It represents knowledge, but it represents something much greater than that. It represents the Kundalini spiral energy up our spinal cord of energy that exists within the human body that then fosters higher consciousness, where we can literally become like gods, like them, become as they are. Okay? If we have the right way, the right teachings, which is why these great sages and mystery schools will go out to these various places and find initiates that were different, that could be open-minded and intelligent enough to be able to follow these ancient teachings. And what's fascinating about that is within that energy center, which is why it's a serpent, because it's a coiled energy center within us, is what's known as the chakra centers. Okay. The chakra centers represent these 7 centers of energy, these almost like ley line convergence zones of the earth. That's why we're like created in perfection with the earth. The earth has got like 72% water. We have the exact same amount of water in our body. We have like the same iron in our blood, like the iron that spins the core of the earth. And also we have these convergence zones of energy known as chakra centers, just like the planet. That's what's wild about what we are and how important we are and more than we're told. These chakra centers, this is what gets even crazier. The vibrational frequency of these chakra centers, we have 7 of them, exactly mimic the 7 colors of the visible light spectrum. Okay. So you go outside, you're taking a walk and it starts raining, right? And then the sun comes out and it shines in, you see a rainbow and you see all the 7 colors of the rainbow in that order. That's the exact order that our chakra centers through their color, but also color is frequency, is exactly mimicked in that within us. We're like light beings. We've been created in perfection for this planet to be like these interpretations of light itself. That's why when people, great ascended masters throughout history, go through these teachings and they learn all this, all of a sudden they become truly conscious and wise, and you go near them and you're like, wow, your energy is amazing. Like, what have you been doing, right? And then that's what that is. There's an aura of energy that they're creating that is basically unlocking the highest potential that exists within us. And that's why civilizations were created with all those teachings, and then they became corrupted all around the world and destroyed. That's the highlight I want to point out about this.
At the end of the show, before you jump, I would like to get your take on what's the point of all this. So you know all this information, you researched all this, great. Why does it matter? And what's the point of us being here then? But you don't answer that now.
That sounds like a really easy question to answer.
Well, I'd like to get.
Or do you want to wait till the end to answer
Let's
that?
get to the end because I know you don't only have a limited amount of time. So
yeah, this is a good show. Let's keep going. So let's go to the next one. Oh,
did actually, I go forward too far?
No. Go back to that. Okay. This is the slide that I meant to talk about all those things that we were just talking about on. This is the Assyrian Tree of Life mural that came from the Ashurbanipal library in his library. Okay. This is so important because it's the totality of everything that I just discussed with you. Okay. They're called the Anuna gods. That's what they call them, which means those from heaven came to earth. Okay. And they call themselves that as well. Now look at this depiction. I want to explain it for a minute. You have the Tree of Life in the center. Okay. And then you have the winged god in the middle, which is like, I think is really like the actual creator of the entire universe. Okay. And then you have 2 individuals in the middle and then 2 individuals on the outside. Okay. Now the individuals on the outside have wings. Okay. That's the Anuna gods. You're looking at what they're talking about in those. And I mean, I looked it up once. The term Anunnaki or Anuna is mentioned in like 27 different tablets that I've got a hold of. They're everywhere. They are the whole description of how all this got started. And they're the ones who say that we are the creators of civilization.
Are there references of these Anuna gods that we may have just glossed over in the narrative of the Bible?
Yeah, they're just what the angels are. Like in like Archangel Michael and all those are the same thing. Okay, so wings means an ascended being. Wings are not literal. We have to be very careful to take literalism and symbolism. Very important to understand that. They created these incredible symbols around the world in megalithic structures, dragons, and things like this for those who are initiates who can understand it. If you take it literally, you will not understand it. That's the whole purpose. Most things in this are symbolic, but some things are literal. So where is the truth? Symbolic, literal, right about in between. That's where I want to strongly emphasize. So the wings just represent them being like ascended masters, great ascended beings of the universe. Now look at what they're doing here, okay? Notice how the individuals in the middle look like the other ones because they're literally the children of them with their bloodlines, which is why they're chosen to rule because they are simply like children of them, okay? Now look at what the two figures on the outer end are doing compared to the two in the middle. So you have one of them is holding a pine cone, and then one's holding a handbag, okay? The pine cone represents the seeds of knowledge. Remember, it's a tree of life, right? So they're passing on the seeds of knowledge. What are the seeds of knowledge? How to create agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, astrology, everything for a civilization. Knowledge of the cosmos, everything is contained in that. Even war, even the knowledge of war. And there's other depictions that show eagle-headed versions of them passing on the knowledge of war. That has to do with like a mentality thing, okay? But that's a whole nother conversation.
So real quickly, there's a pine cone in the middle of Vatican City.
Yes, there is. So
the pine cone was metaphorically bastardized and adopted by Christianity or Catholicism or religion?
Yes.
Sorry, I need to understand that connection.
Okay, so the Pope wears a hat. That was literally the ancient mitre hat in these civilizations. It's the same thing. They are just mimicking. It's a corrupted version of these original individuals, and I'm gonna get into how that plays in this mural too. So the pine cone represents the passing of knowledge. And the handbag represents them having the totality of all knowledge. So the pine cone symbolically comes out of the handbag to show that they have all the knowledge and they're passing it on to very specific individuals. Go ahead.
Okay, I have to ask a question because I see this in a lot of these murals. They're holding bags all the time in a lot of the different architecture.
Yes, exactly.
So the bags represent what?
The bags represent the keepers of knowledge. So if you like, this is in Mesopotamia. This is the mural from Ashurbanipal Library. You see the same depiction of the handbag and pine cone in the Olmec culture in Mexico. You see it all throughout South America and Mexico. You see it in Mesopotamia. You see other similar depictions like all around the world. And it shows that the same influences of these original progenitors went around the world and created civilizations everywhere. It's the same thing. It's what is shown all around the world. And it's what is basically depicted of that. So look how there's two on either end. Now look at the two individuals in the middle. One of them has a staff, right? And a rod. So one of them is a priest and one of them is a king. Okay.
So this one is the staff. That's what you're saying, correct?
Yes. So the masculine rod of ruling, and then you have a priest basically, sitting next to them. So they're showing that the totality of how a society is governed and ruled, it's known as kingship. A king is told all the knowledge to rule over that segment, and then a priest is given all the knowledge to basically be in charge of religion. So you have the kingship and the religious aspect that come together to be the hierarchy to rule over all of society. And that's what those two depictions are, is a king and a priest being taught all the knowledge to literally create civilizations and to be the great wisdom keepers of their. That's why they were so obsessed with these gods all throughout history. It was literal. There were actually being given information on only a higher level by them, and that's why eventually they left. You can actually read in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and people think it's all parables and all that stuff. No. Go look at the section where Gilgamesh meets Utnapishtim to learn the secrets of immortality. And he tells them, he says, Gilgamesh, I'm going to tell you an ancient story, a city so old that it was from a different time period, basically. He says the gods were once in it. And then the deluge, the destruction came through and they left. They didn't come back. That's why knowledge is disintegrated and just been destroyed over time, because they felt so bad about allowing the catastrophe 13,000 years ago that we almost literally were like completely reset, or we were reset, but we almost didn't even make it. And they felt guilty of that because they are our creators.
I've heard you talk about, and I'm not going to go down this channel with you, but I've heard you talk about in some of your early shows on the Inuna, and there was, and I'm probably going to bastardize the names, but Enlil, Inky, and there was sort of a division between these creators, and one was supporting humanity's continuation, and one was not. Yeah, and that's a conversation that's for another time. But in a quick recap, what does that have to do with what we're looking at here, if any?
Okay. So they're not actually, this isn't specifically supposed to be like Enki and Enlil. What it really represents is more of just like a higher view of them passing knowledge. However, we got to remember there's fundamental constants that exist in the universe. And one of them is duality. Polarity and duality means you have to have what we perceive as like dark and light, or good and evil on either sides. And these beings were literally playing and representing those archetypal roles in the universe. And it became, that's why they, in biblical terms, they call it like a war in heaven. It was simply just a war of these creators over how sophisticated and what our path should be, and how some of them thought that we should never have existed in the first place.
One final question before we move into the next one. Are there any parallels between the handbags these people are holding in this mural here versus you see a lot of times in modern astronauts who are getting ready to board a ship? They're always carrying something. And I seem to recall you talking about something once, but I don't remember what that was. Is there any parallel?
I think that's looking at something too literal, because remember, they were never carrying any of this stuff. They didn't have a pine cone in their hand. They didn't have a handbag. No. None of that was real. It was all symbolic.
Understood.
It was all just them showing the passing of knowledge and how they're the keepers of knowledge, essentially. Try to be careful with literalism versus symbolism, okay?
Does any of this translate over into, when you're saying that this is found basically around the world, into Egyptian hieroglyphs or anything like that? Like the
similarities to it, like for instance, we find the cobra on the forehead of the ancient pharaohs, representing their third eye and representing that they had the knowledge. So it is a similar depictions, but not quite the same thing. But they're similar in some ways. Go ahead and go to the next one, because we're going to have to, we're going to have to keep moving because we have two more to go. Now, I don't want to stay on this too long. We've talked about this, but basically I spent months and months taking every piece of knowledge that I had, studying all these ancient civilizations, and I created my own timeline on when I think all of these events occurred, and when the first Adapa was created, and when these ancient Sumerian cities existed, and when the pyramids were built, and when the Indus Valley civilizations created things like Kanhari caves and Bara Bara caves and Ellora caves, and when Göbekli Tepe was built, and when the pre-Incan Olmec existed. Again, all these things, I tried to stagger and create them, and when those cyclical catastrophes of the Younger Dryas were. So this is, people can find this on my website, thestageoftime.com, and I have this color image there. Go ahead and check it out. And it's something that is being worked into the new book I'm writing with Billy Carson called The Epic of Humanity. And it's going to be telling this lost story. But again, I want people to go look at this on their own. It's going to take us too long if we try to break all this down. But this is basically just like a snapshot of where I think all these things lined up based on the evidence.
All right.
Okay.
Did I miss a slide?
No, we're good. We're on the last one. And now, and again, we can get into as detailed as this, we have like, 10 minutes. We should probably wrap it up. Okay. But, so why is this happening? These cyclical catastrophes, why? Okay. I want to point out and announce, and I've never announced this before, so you guys are getting a special announcement that no one knows. So I hope you like that. The greatest project that I'm ever going to take on, that I've taken on so far in all my work, the book I'm doing with Billy is incredibly important. But the next one that I'm going to be doing is going to take years, and it's going to be the compiling and the research of everything that's come, the totality of everything that I've figured out. And what it is I'm going to call the next book that I'm going to write is going to be called The Dead Star and Fall of Civilizations. And that is going to be what I consider the greatest project that I've ever taken on. And it's going to be a very challenging one. And what I basically have found that not many researchers have connected is that Unlike, and this isn't a dig on some of the other alternative researchers. I have enormous amounts of respect. I just want to point out for Graham Hancock and Reynold Carlson and just so many others that have this belief that these cyclical catastrophes are from cosmic impacts. Okay. Love all their research, love all that. I don't agree with that at all, though. There's only one researcher that disagrees with that, and his name is Robert Schoch. And I want to point him out. Now, he has basically pointed out, hey, no. I think this might be more related to like a coronal mass ejection from the sun. I've taken it a step further. And so I'm just going to briefly explain this a little bit for people to understand. When NASA was looking at our solar system in the 1970s, they discovered that the outer planets in our solar system, Uranus and Neptune, are tilted on their axis. Not only that, but the entire solar system is tilted. It's all slightly tilted on its axis. And they were like, what is going on? Why? What's going on with that? And so they sent out two probes known as Pioneer 10 and 11 in 1983. Now, Pioneer 10 went off a certain direction and Pioneer 11 did. Pioneer 11 didn't find anything. Pioneer 10 found the greatest secret that no civilization really has like put together to then find a solution for like we did. Because again, this technology hasn't been available. I don't think we ever had probes to send out like we did now. I think they knew about it, but they didn't know in the degree of that we figured out. So they sent out Pioneer 10, and if people want to understand this whole thing, I gotta stop and just and point something out. If you go look up Pioneer 10 right now, you'll see that the internet has been scrubbed everywhere. You can't find anything on Pioneer 10. You'll find about when it was launched, and you'll find that it went out to explore the solar system, but you won't find anything on what it found. Because what it found was the great secret to all of this. The greatest secret ever kept. What they found was that, and I want to point out that I have a high definition, high resolution image of what that Pioneer 10 probe found, because I was able to dig it up with another couple of researchers long ago, where there was only one place.
Why don't we have that picture?
I know. There was only one place that the Pioneer 10 data was ever kept in and shown to the world. And it was known as the 1987 Science and Invention Encyclopedia. And back then, encyclopedias were the norm before the internet. And they simply published a diagram of what it found, but the description mentions nothing. And that's what's so wild about it. It's like, so, okay. So they were told not to say anything about it, but the diagram was still published. I have the only high resolution image that I've ever found from that I was able to dig up through extensive searching. And it's on my website, thestageoftime.com, on the main page. I highly recommend people go and see that, because it's going to blow your mind. Now, what it found, it went out. So imagine the solar system as there's an asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and then you go out through Uranus and Neptune, and then you have Pluto way out there, right? And then you have the sun. And then there's what's known as the Kuiper Belt, this massive circular belt of asteroids and comets that exists around what's known as the inner solar system. But there's a whole nother aspect of our solar system called the outer solar system that plays major roles in this whole thing. And so Pioneer goes out, it goes through the Kuiper Belt, and it whisks its way off, and it discovers two massive objects. And when I mean far out, we're talking about 3 to 4 times further than Pluto is, okay? And Pluto's way out in the middle of nowhere. They found a planet, okay, that is 4 to 5 times the size of Earth. And you can go look that up on NASA in like 1993 or 1991. They actually announced that. They announced that they found a planet in the outer solar system that's 4 to 5 times the size of Earth. They actually said that in a press announcement, and then it just kind of disappeared when Robert Harrington and Thomas Van Flaerden, who were astronomers, were investigating this, and mysteriously both died. Yeah. And then the whole thing was buried. And then other astronomers came on and said that everything they did was mathematical calculations, and everyone's like, okay, that's fine, that makes sense. Whereas Caltech University has been doing studies where they're studying the Kuiper Belt, and they found that objects are all tilted, even out there, from something out beyond it. Okay. So what did Pioneer 10 find? It found a planet that exists far out there, not Nibiru, a planet though that they termed Planet 9 or Planet 10, depending on what you want to call it, way out, revolving around its own star. Okay. But not, remember the title of my book? Not a normal star, a dead star. What that means is if you have a dead and they knew that because they were able to measure the frequency, the light coming from this star, which isn't really anything, but they were able to determine that this star had lost nuclear fusion and it exploded. And it was just a remnant of this star, but it's got massive density. It's still a massively dense object, okay? It didn't turn into a black hole. It turned into what's called a dead star. And in that depiction on my website, for Pioneer, the data from that encyclopedia, they label it as a dead star. They say that it's 50 billion miles out. 50 billion miles out. So far, and has no light, has no signature. It's not a brown or red dwarf. It's a dead star, which means it exploded long ago in history, which makes me wonder if it was actually part of some of the heat that was around during the dinosaur period, but that's 60 million years ago, but that's another whole conversation. But this star exploded and then has an orbit, right? What happens is the orbit is exactly 13,000 years on perihelion when it gets closest to our sun. So imagine a highly, incredibly dense object, and this is what the whole book's going to be about. Highly dense object that every 13,000 years, perihelion means the closest approach to our sun. It means the whole entire rotation of this object is 26,000 years. The exact same number as the precession of the equinox. It's the reason that our entire solar system is functioning the way that it does. So every 13,000 years, imagine this object, this incredible dense dead star approaches our sun. And our sun tries to maintain what's known as equilibrium, and the energy comes in and affects it. And the only way for our sun to not explode is it has to send out energy. So every 13,000 years, it sends out a massive plume of charged particles that go throughout the entire solar system, and then they hit the Earth. The poles on the Earth wobble and move, and they set off every single tectonic plate on the entire planet. Every volcano, every tectonic plate, and they cause tsunamis that are like a mile high that travel around the world or more than a mile high and literally destroy every single civilization over and over again. And they bring on their own climate changes. That's why ice ages develop, because as that dead star goes what's known as aphelion away from our sun, it gets cold again. And then an ice age develops on the Earth. And then as it gets closer to the Earth, all that heat from our sun as it comes out warms up our climate, because we're talking about an event that is like extremely long, like well over 1,000 years. And the period of as it's getting closer and going away is thousands of years. So that's why you get this rise and fall of these temperatures in glaciation and then non-glaciation over and over again on the planet. It's from the interaction of this dead star. That's what the greatest secret that I've never talked about in that way before to share with your audience tonight.
Well, thank you for dropping that. So can I just, in my layman terms, you talked about massive tsunamis, floods, mile-high tsunamis. Is that the story of the epic that ended in, the Bible, Noah's Ark, et cetera? Is that where you're going with that?
Yep. So imagine a flood being caused from tectonic plate activity. That's what destroyed Atlantis. That's where all this has come from. Okay. It's all from the same thing that happens over and over again. And that's why those civilizations built the pyramids in the location that they did, so that they could try to prevent and harness and balance the energy of the Earth so that they could prevent these events, but they weren't able to. Those structures are built in specific locations to try to balance the electromagnetic energy of the planet, but they couldn't do it. It like literally blew them open. And so I'm going to get into this in the book, but the greatest secret besides that is that the Nikola Tesla technology that's being used, they're down in Antarctica right now with governments all over the world creating an artificially created electromagnetic system, a giant magnet of energy to try to tilt the Earth in the opposite direction to try to prevent when this dead star comes through, they're able to prevent the poles from shifting by creating it like their own their own like artificially magnetic technology that they're using to basically prevent, for the first time in human history, I believe, our destruction secretly, so that nobody knows about it, which is what the whole purpose of all the secrecy in Antarctica.
And that's why it's a no-fly zone and nobody can go over there.
Yeah.
Man. So at the outset of the show, you said that's the secret, that we should be able to technically stop this if we have the information and we use it properly.
Exactly. That we are, think people like Nikola Tesla, who figured out what the ancients already knew, but then we took it to the next level, and we have the technological means to prevent our own destruction for the first time in our entire story.
So if that rings true, then the paradigm of persistent digression of evolution and our technology could stop and reverse and go the other direction, which is the whole point of us being here in the third dimension, to collectively learn to evolve as a species, so that the information that we take and the technology that we learn, we can then begin to ascend back up the other side of the ladder.
Exactly. And for the first time, we can take all, think about it, Göbekli Tepe was buried until we discovered it only in 1995. Meaning we're not only taking what we've accomplished, but everything that's been left behind from all the civilizations that sacrificed themselves to give us the knowledge to allow us to reach this point of understanding and technological means for us to go somewhere that we've never been able to go in our entire story.
So my question before you answered all that was, great, we know all this, now what? So the point is, so that we have this information so that we can collectively add to this exacerbation of us growing, not digressing. But we're just lay people. We don't have access to Antarctica. We're not part of the history. We're not part of the research. So what's our role versus the elites that are running everything?
Great question. Is knowledge and raising the consciousness on the entire planet. We all have an effect on each other, and it's not what we think. Like, imagine, the depictions of a Buddhist monk sitting on top of a mountaintop, meditating. He's projecting out his consciousness to the world. We are all those creators of higher consciousness that are part of what's known as co-creation. All humans on the earth. We've never had 8 billion people here ever before. And we have the technology to prevent this. Imagine 8 billion co-creators all coming together with their consciousness and raising it up to a certain vibrational level. We're literally going to evolve our consciousness to the next stages, as well as having the technological means to prevent our own destruction. What do we become? We become gods. We become like creator gods. We don't even understand it. We are so much more advanced than we're told, and we have the ability to reach something that I don't think anyone even knows what that is. Something multidimensional, something that's beyond the physical form.
So this question is probably going to take hours to respond to, because there's so many different ways you could take this. But the current state of affairs seems to be a maelstrom of chaos. And from my unbiased perspective, it seems like there is a purging, a purposeful purging of people. So I'm not suggesting I know the answers to this, but the people who are building this information and building this technology know about everything and the way they can change this and reverse the paradigm that we've been talking about. Are they trying to hold and hoard this information for a select group of people?
Yes. And I don't want to go too far down that road.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
People, but I'll just tell you that the global elites, most of the things that we see around the world, major, large scale of things, are always planned. It's always some kind of like a strategic chess match.
Yeah.
It's a chess match. And so I'm not going to mention what the events are, but you look at where we are in the world, and there's these different strategic things that happen. Then they start to die off, and then another one emerges like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are just tools to try to keep our consciousness in a state of fear, because fear is a way to keep you in the lowest state of consciousness possible, to prevent. They don't want the masses of humanity reaching those higher stages of consciousness, becoming enlightened and learning the whole thing, because then the whole puppet show's over. There is darkness that exists. There are bad people that are still in charge of certain things here. Yes, they may be preventing our own destructions through their own selfish means, but in the end, it's all going to work in the way that it's supposed to. And have faith in something much greater than us and them in this story. Because remember, the Maya prophesized, like other civilizations, long ago that this was the version that was going to make it. How would they have known that? Unless this is the one that was destined to make it. So understand that all the darkness and all the evil that exists here today, it's simply a shell of something that's playing a part that doesn't even know the part it's playing. But honestly, our future is guided by something much higher than that. And we are destined to have this be the version that makes it into the infinite. And so I want people to be positive and resonate with that and not be fearful and scared, and understand that this is the greatest time in all of human history to be alive.
I love that ending. Wow. Any questions?
I'm blown away.
Matt, I know
Absolutely blown away.
I know you don't have any more time to talk. We didn't even get into my other questions from your book that I wanted to ask. So
It's okay. We can do it another time, though.
I would love to. Thank you for this knowledge drop, really. And
My
thank you,
pleasure.
thank you for ending on a positive note for those who have been listening along.
And just unraveling it in such a way that it just flowed from one thing to the next. That really, made it much more easier to digest and to resonate on later. We'll be up all night talking about
I
this.
told you how he breaks it down.
Yeah.
It just makes it sense. It makes sense, doesn't it? Whew. Okay, my mind is stirring right now. Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate your time and the energy and the impact that you've made on this conversation, and I'm grateful for it. And
Hey, thanks. I enjoyed talking to you guys. It was really, really nice conversation.
appreciate it. All right. All the best to you. I'll be in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you again.